Since the introduction of the interstate system in 1956, the population of the United States has doubled, and automobile usage has become integral to living your life in this country. This means urban metros have seen a vast increase in traffic. So today we're going to explore the worst highways for this, and find out which interstate has the worst traffic in the country. Before that though, please consider subscribing to the channel. I make educational geography content like this every week, and seeing a lot of growth on the channel gives me so much motivation. So please just simply hit the subscribe button because it helps me out more than you know. Thank you. So we are looking for the most heavily congested interstate in the entire country. And to do that, we're going to have to look through a few options that we think it could be. Like I-95, known to be one of the most iconic routes in the country, spanning from Miami, Florida to the Canadian border. Traveling up the east coast of the United States and traveling through such cities as Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, and Boston, just to name a few. This means out of the 1,917 miles that I-95 travels, 1,040 miles are traversing through urban areas. Among these 1,040 miles, over 60% is currently considered to be under heavy congestion by the Department of Transportation. Through New York, or more specifically the small portion between Broadway and I-895, Interstate 95 sees an average daily traffic, or ADT, of 116,000. This feels like it describes all of I-95, making it the interstate with the worst traffic. Well, obviously not, because what about the portion in between Savannah and Jacksonville, where it's pretty much all just swamp? Or the over 200 miles through Maine? I-95 is too extensive to be the busiest interstate. There's simply too much going on throughout the 2,000 miles the route takes. So what now? Well, we have to think a little bit harder for this, because we'll run into the same problem for most interstates. I-5 through Los Angeles and Mission Viejo are both in the top 2 among most travel locations by ADT. But what about I-5 from Reading to Eugene, which brings down the average by a ton? There's also I-75 through Atlanta, which sees 419,000 drivers per day. How is that not enough to take the crown? Well, the answer is pretty easy. The winner must be a spur route. The household interstates are simply too long to have the worst traffic. It has to be a spur route that stays within one metropolitan area throughout its lifespan. This takes the Katy Freeway out of the equation as well, because it's considered part of I-10. So where would be the first place to look? Well, the top 5 states by percent of urban interstate congestion would be Florida, Delaware, New Jersey, Maryland, and of course California. Notably, only one of these states are not on the Atlantic coast, and it also just so happens to be number 1 on the list. Another interesting thing on this list is the VMT increase throughout the United States, with Nevada, Louisiana, North Carolina, Utah, and Colorado seeing the largest increase in vehicles. It doesn't matter to the video, but it's just very interesting. So back to our quest, starting with Florida. A lot of freeways in this state are not actually interstate spur routes, making them irrelevant to this video. One route I did find was I-595 in Fort Lauderdale, but it doesn't have an overwhelming amount of traffic. Next up is Delaware, which just isn't going to have the top interstate if we're being real here. The only reason it was so high on the ADT list was because of the way it was calculated, which was the percent of urban interstates being highly congested. Delaware only has a few real urban interstates, and they're all fairly congested, but none even come close to number 1 on the list. After that, we have New Jersey, which has some nice competitors. I-676 through the beautiful metropolis of Camden is a notable one. But when you get into the really busy areas of North Jersey, you'll find the busiest areas are on major interstates, with I-95 and the New Jersey Turnpike, I-80 and I-78 getting the worst of the congestions. But there is one road that intrigued me, and that's I-280, a 17-mile spur route stretching from I-80 to downtown Newark, which has an ADT of 90,000. I'll come back to this later, but it's a big competitor. Next we have Maryland, which mainly suffers from DC's traffic, which bleeds into Maryland. The main spur route everyone always talks about is I-495, known as the Capital Beltway. It has an ADT as high as 252,000 in just small portions of it. But over the entire Beltway, it evens out and does not end up near the top of the list, which was a huge surprise to me. Finally, we move to the one you've all been waiting for, California. Out of the top 25 busiest interstate portions by ADT, California has 12, as well as 3 of the top 4 on the list. Number 1 is I-5 through LA, which is not a surprise. Sadly, we run into the same problem as before, because I-5 is a long interstate that goes through less busy areas than LA. So if what you're looking for is the single busiest portion of the interstate system, you'll find it right here. But that's not what I'm looking for in this video. So we talked about I-280 just a little bit ago, which is a strong competitor, but it's going up against two California spur routes, I-405 and 210. So I-280 has a main knock of only having an ADT of 90,000, with 210 having 358,000 and 405 having 383,000. But when we bring in distance, dividing it by the amount of miles, we find three numbers that will decide the interstate with the worst traffic in the country. At number 3, I have I-210 with 4,500 vehicles per mile. It came in slightly behind the number 2, with the number 1 being ways ahead of the rest. So with an ADT per mile of 7,000, the busiest interstate in America is I-405 in the Los Angeles metro, beating I-280 by around 1.8 thousand vehicles per mile. So where is I-405 that makes it this way? Well, it stretches from San Fernando in the north through the southwestern part of the Los Angeles area, going through cities like Santa Monica, Torrance, Long Beach, Huntington Beach, and ending in Irvine. The Los Angeles area has the worst traffic in the country on its own, and I-405 is a major spur route going through completely populated areas the whole time. I'm sure if you considered 1-mile freeways, dividing them by miles to find a larger total, you could come out with a different answer than me. But I-405 seems to be widely considered as the busiest interstate in the country, seeing almost constant traffic. Overall, though, this video tells us one thing, and that's that urban freeways, as much as they help cross-country truckers and impatient commuters caught up by the hustle and bustle of the world get to where they want to be easier, they don't always work and need a lot of changing. Thanks for watching. Thank you to the members Dominic Psyche, Jeremy Crone, Carport, Rosebud 4, Aaron Washington, and Bryson. If you want to become a member on the channel, the join button is right next to the subscribe button, as well as a link in the description that'll take you straight to it. Thank you.